Start that recording now. And welcome to this great mindfulness session that we've set up for catered particularly for our visual arts teachers. And I'm really happy and thankful that my colleague Kellie Bailey, who's the social emotional learning specialist at the Department of Education, was on with some music teachers with me last week. And this was such a popular session that Kellie and I said, can we do one for visual arts? And we said, absolutely. And we're so happy to do one for visual arts, for our visual arts friends, because Kellie's daughter, Hannah, is art teacher in Lemoyne, at Lemoyne Consolidated School, which, by the by, is my alma mater, where I went to kindergarten through 8th grade. So I'm really excited to have them on to lead you through some mindfulness techniques and just some ways to approach your own thought process and your own work now and in the future, and hopefully some strategies that you can transmit to your students during these frustrating and challenging times. So Bailey, ladies, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks. I think I'll probably lead. I think that's what Hannah and I had determined, that I'll take the lead and she'll follow up. And I have the Bailey dog next to me who wants me to hold her paw. So if you hear something, that's Gracie on the bottom here. So thanks so much for asking me to be part of this, Jason. I really appreciate it. And I am so excited just to be able to have my daughter, to have Hannah collaborate with me for this offering. I'm a certified mindfulness meditation educator, and I'm also a certified social emotional learning specialist. And my background is speech language pathology. I spent 30 years working as an SLP, primarily in public schools, but also in the private sector. And I've had a deep background in the neurodevelopment sequence for children. And I'm also kind of a brain geek. So this was just a great opportunity for me to bring all of the skill set that I have to the Department of Education. And I'm just really thrilled to be able to work for a commissioner who has such a forward thinking platform and who wants to make social emotional learning for students and for educators our primary area, so that we can really tap into optimal learning. And a lot of what I do when I work with teachers and with students is I start with kind of a brain 101 and really help people understand that, we have moments of responsivity and we have moments of reactivity, and that all depends on and ebbs and flows based on the emotional context that we have in any one moment. And we all can, call upon times when we've started our day in this place of everything's lining up pretty well. And then, something happens that takes us down a different path and shows up and we emote in a different way, and then it takes us off our game. So it's really important for us to really understand the neurodevelopmental sequence of who we are as human beings, and to really sit in that space of understanding that we are human beings and not human doings. And that's really what mindfulness is about. It's a fancy word that seems to have gained a lot of momentum, and some people are not super excited about that word just because they might have some association or connotation to religion or Buddhism. But basically, the training that I have is solidly rooted in brain science and neuroscience. And so what we're talking about really is a particular way to pay attention on purpose with our, every facet of who we are. So, when our kids come into our classrooms, it's really important for us not to just automatically assume that everyone's ready to learn in that moment. And so if we have this opportunity to kind of center ourselves before kids come in, even just a couple deep breaths, and then recognize that, whether you teach little children or big children, everybody's moving through spaces and places of emotional transitions. And right now, especially with being in a remote learning situation, everybody's kind of in that hyper acute place. Everybody's dealing with teaching and learning and really living in this place of uncertainty. And so there's this dysregulation that happens. So the first thing that I do is really talk about the brain, and paring this down really simply to, we have a thinking brain and we have a protecting brain. The thinking brain is our prefrontal cortex, right? It lives right here, and it is the biggest part of our brain. It's your executive functioning brain. And so that brain is what allows us to think, remember, process, listen, plan, and execute, and recall information. And if that brain, that prefrontal cortex, is online and integrated so that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere and is talking to each other, and we feel safe, connected, and loved, then we're able to tap into an optimal learning place. And then you, as art educators, you want your kids to have that right hemisphere working, that creative piece of their lives working. And that goes hand in hand with that prefrontal cortex. And when we are feeling really regulated and really okay, then we can easily access those different parts of the brain to be creative and to communicate. But when we get a little bit upset or a little overwhelmed or a little frightened or a little embarrassed or a little anxious, confused, the prefrontal cortex and all the neurochemistry that supports the prefrontal cortex starts to bog down and slow down. And so then the energy shifts to something called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the protecting brain. And there are only a few things that we can do when we're in the protecting brain zone. And that's either fight with our words or our body, run away, which is called flight, freeze, or submit. And so fight, flight, freeze. And basically, I do a lot of teaching with that with the Dr. Dan Siegel's hand-brain model. And I know Hannah, she'll talk about this a little bit, that she may have, she uses some of this with her kiddos. And this is just a really great way if you are an art, if you're working with kids with art, do a little segment about the brain. You can share with them, hey, I'm learning about the brain, and I'm learning about, what stress does to the brain. And so the amygdala, for those of you who are brain geeks like me, you know that it kind of sits right behind the prefrontal cortex down deep. And it's really about the size of an almond. And when the amygdala, when you feel, for little kids, we say it's tucked safe as a bug in a rug, right? And when you're calm and cool and collected and everything's kind of going A-okay and emotions are, allowing you to tap into the neurochemistry of serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin, then this part is working. But when you get a little upset, we call it flipping our lid. That's what Dr. Dan Siegel calls it, flipping your lid. Hannah and I call it flipping your lid and losing your cool. And so this is the part that activates. And so everything that supported this learning, this online learning, gets bogged down and slows down. And this part here says, hey, wait a second, what's going on? And so this is supported through the neurochemistry of cortisol and norepinephrine and adrenaline. And a little bit of that is really important, right? We don't want to walk through our days like zombies. We have to be able to, adjust and ebb and flow. But when we are in a hyper acute state of reactivity, and our kids who have very high ACE scores, 2, 3, 4, and above, those kiddos are always operating in a place of the amygdala first. So they're amygdala learners. We call them reactive learners. You guys know those kiddos. We have external learners and internal learners of reactivity. The external learners are really easy to find, you know them. They're the ones that come in and they're posturing and they're telling you, and I'm not going to do anything, or they're flipping the chairs, or, as soon as they get angry, they're really explosive and they're easy to point out. You know them. They're not tricky. They're not easy to work with, but they're not tricky to find. They're pretty visceral. But your silent sufferers are your intrinsic, these are the ones that sit and you can tell that there's just something there, like I can't quite reach this kid, I'm not sure what's going on with this kiddo. And they're the kiddos that are fluttering with, reactivity as well, but they just don't emote it the same way that a really explosive kiddo would do. So mindfulness, when we bring that practice in to any content area that you teach or that we teach as educators, when we do that, when we give kids and human beings small moments to just reset, reframe, and refocus, it does some magical things to the brain, because our brain is not equipped to deal with chronic toxic stress. So if we are constantly in that state, we will start to shut down and other systems will shut down. So it's really important for us to have that understanding just first and foremost. When Hannah's talking, I'm going to pull up a visual for us to share later, but the Mind Up curriculum, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mind Up, but it's written actually by Goldie Hawn. I was totally I was astounded that, you know, this amazing actress and comedian would partner with some really wonderful brain-based neuroscientists to come up with this curriculum. It's called the Mind Up curriculum. And it's great for art teachers because you can pull in so many elements of art with the brain. And if you look up mindup.com, they have a ton of free resources and some really beautiful printable brain posters that you can print out and have. Just knowing, I use something as simple as this. Actually, Hannah drew this for me. And this I use with little kids, and I'm happy to share this with you if you want to shoot me an email, kelly.bailey@maine.gov. I don't know if you can see it, but basically, Hannah, do you want to just kind of walk through what we've got here? Can you see that?
I can see it, yeah. I don't know that I drew this one, though. I'm just saying.
Okay. Well, I might have taken your template.
Anyway, so yeah, the front of our brain here, we have the thinking brain, our amygdala, our protecting brain, and all of our emotion is in the back. So when we're in the back of our brain here, and when our kids are flipping their lid, they're all in the back, and they're not ready to learn. So it's super important for educators to get them to the place where they're able to use that front brain. And I've learned all of that from my mom. So it's been really
So what we do, yeah, and Hannah, what we do with this, and Hannah developed a really nice, beautiful wall-size poster for me when I was in the schools. We would have that up in my classroom, and kiddos would come in and they would actually point to, so, you know, many of you probably know the zones of regulation, and we know that the green zone is our just right, and that's when we're ready to learn zone. So we actually color this part of the brain. If you work with littles, and hang with me, if you work with middle school and high school kids, we'll get to a different place. But for little ones, pre-K through even 5th grade, they can use something like this. You know, we've colored this part green. So green means go, and it means that we're in that just right learning place. And when we're in that just right learning place, we feel safe, connected, and A-okay, right? We're able to easily access. But first we have to kind of know, how am I feeling and where does that feeling live in my body? And then we color this part in red, not because it's bad or dangerous, but, you know, when we're in the red zone, then we've really flipped our lid, and we have to leave the classroom, or we have to have some other interventions to help us, you know, de-escalate. So the whole point is not to stay in the red zone. It's for us to know back here, we call it the ocean of emotions. So we color this blue, and we talk about all emotions are okay. Every single human emotion is okay, because we are human beings. We're going to vacillate through emotional states. What we know is that emotion steers attention, and attention is what drives our learning. So if we're in a inflection, or we're pulling away from my teacher because I'm suffering for whatever I'm suffering about, my father just got arrested, or, you know, I don't have food, my grandmother died, my dog died, you know, whatever it is, or simply I don't know who's picking me up after school today. You know, we have a whole plethora of anxious kids out there. So we don't know, you know, what's going to happen. And we have to start shifting the way that we see and perceive our children when they come through the door with, are you ready to learn yet? And so if you take that mindful moment, and Hannah can explain some different things about that, but basically it's just taking a breath break and just talking about, you know, hey, before we get ready, I know I just had a really busy session with, you know, this grade, and we're not going to hop right into learning until we do X, Y, Z. And I'm going to give the floor to Hannah about that. But this is just a really nice visual. And what I was saying is, if you have one of the posters, if you have a brain-based poster, I'm talking about when we get back into school, and we will someday, we will. But if you have a poster on your wall, and kids can come in and say, you know, they used to say to me, Mrs. Bailey, I'm in my thinking brain, I'm ready to roll. And another kid would come in and say, I'm not, I'm in my protecting brain, I feel here, or I feel sad today. And then we would say, you know, okay, sad, are we able to access our thinking brain, or are we accessing our protecting brain? Oh, yeah, I'm not ready to learn. And so we would just take that small moment to, and that's, by the way, the first social emotional learning competency. There are 5 of them. And the first one is self-assessment. And ask 2 questions. How do I feel right this minute? And where does that feeling live in my body? And it's just really honoring that. So mindfulness is about, am I able to pay attention? And can I regulate myself so that I can pay attention, and giving myself permission to be present with curiosity and interest rather than judgment, and you know, creating stories. And also, when we teach kids about that, we are not our emotions, that we feel sad, that doesn't make us a sad human. I feel angry doesn't mean that I'm an angry person. And so once we start understanding that emotions don't equal our identity, then we can make this kind of neuroplastic shift. And the other thing that breathing on purpose does is it just allows you to calm the parasympathetic nervous system. So we have 2 nervous systems. It's all within the central nervous system, but the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system, when it is operational, when it's in its operational zone, that's when we start not being able to focus. It's when our belly starts, you know, churning. These are your kids who want to go to the nurse. These are your kids who don't feel good and they need to, you know, they're your exit seekers, or these are your kids that, you know, come in and they're the wet noodle. So when the parasympathetic nervous system is on alert, you just know if you see kids coming in and they're posturing or they're avoiding and escaping, that this means the neurochemistry of their body and brain is not in a good place for you to do any type of teaching. So that's just kind of a quick and dirty 101 of the brain. Bear Shea is the mental health coordinator and specialist for our team. And he and I are working on putting together a video and putting it up on our website. So I know you're recording this, so that's good. You guys can reference this again if you want any of, you know, if you want that picture that I drew up referencing Hannah's work, I'm happy to share it with you. You can share it with your kids. And I'm going to find a couple of videos that I'd like to share with you. But I wanted to know if maybe Hannah, if you could just talk about what kind of mindful practices you do and just basically how you go through it. Oh, Jason, are there any questions?
I was going to say, but before you do that, Hannah, just to, as we're transitioning, everybody, if you want to use the chat box in Zoom at the bottom of your screen, if you want to, I'm putting some information in there. I've put a couple links in to some things that Kelly referenced already about Goldie Hawn's work and Dr. Siegel's work. If you want to put questions in there and you don't want to feel like you're interrupting, go ahead and put those in and I'll organize them for Kelly and Hannah, and then we can get to them as we get time at the end. So go ahead, Hannah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll just introduce myself really quickly. So I'm Hannah Bailey. I work at Lemoyne Consolidated School as an art teacher, and I teach K through 8. I'm working on my mindfulness certification, and I'm also in my master's program at Husson for school counseling. So that's what I'm doing right now. My mindfulness background really comes from my mom and from her introducing me to this. And then I knew as a future teacher that was going to be important to implement, but I didn't know how important until I started working last year as an ed tech previously before I got my first art job. And like my mom said, we can't assume our students are ready to learn when they walk into the classroom. And that was the biggest takeaway from being an ed tech, where I worked one-to-one with a student all day. When I'd follow his class to art, they might have just had a really tricky math class, and that wasn't always easy to do. Sorry, I just got distracted. So sometimes you might have like a really hard math class, or you might have something that happened at home and you don't see what your students coming to school with. So we can't assume that our students are ready to learn when they walk into the classroom. So I guess what I have decided, and I made a promise to myself when I became a future art teacher, was I would, is this working, Mom? Am I good? Okay, sorry. I wasn't sure it was working. So I made a promise to myself as a future art teacher that I would make sure my students were given time at the beginning of each class to have mindful moments. I would let whatever just happened previously in their other classroom be, and when they came in, it's a new start, but I was going to give them time to center themselves and for me to be de-stressing and time to breathe too. So I guess the ways that I do this are breathing. We do quiet breathing. I put on sometimes YouTube meditation music, and I'll just have them put a hand on their heart, a hand on their belly, and I invite them to just breathe on purpose. Breathe in really slowly through your nose, breathe slowly out through your mouth. Or some kids don't respond well to having that and feeling like people are looking at them, so I'll invite them to put their heads on their desk if that's more comfortable. Sometimes I do guided painting where my students will lay on the floor, they close their eyes, and I'll guide them through, creating a painting where they pick up a paintbrush and slowly start to paint a scene and ground yourself in there. And I just invite them to slowly, like, here, we'll put the grass and let's add in the sky, and here, let's add the clouds and the birds. And now that it's getting warmer, we can go on mindful walks. Sometimes our mindful moments take longer, and I only see my kindergarten students for 30 minutes, but if I spend 10 just letting them breathe, I think that's super important for their day. So sometimes we'll go for a walk outside, and it's all about, what do you notice? How does your body feel? Do you smell the air, see the colors, touch the grass, hear the sounds? And I give them time to just settle in before we're going to start any sort of art lesson and throwing more information at them. I think it's important for the kids. It's important for me. And I also think it's difficult to do this remotely, but I'm noticing that it's something I've backburnered and I'm wishing that I was implementing more. So moving forward, it's something that I want to start to think about next week's April break. So it gives me some time to think about how I'm going to do that, but it's making me feel a little guilty because I think now more than ever, kids need mindfulness. Parents are stressed, kids are stressed, I'm stressed. The world feels like it's been totally turned upside down. So mindfulness is so important to get our feet back under us and to know that we're okay. And I don't know who's going to do it for my kiddos if I don't, because it's something that I'm thinking about. So I've put together a little list of things I can still do for my kids with mindfulness. I mean, I can still record myself reading mindful children's stories, and I can invite my students to breathe at the end. I can record myself doing guided mindful breathing, just like my students do in the art room, and I can invite them to breathe in, breathe out throughout their day and to teach their parents how to do it. I can still add mindful art options in their week, like go for a mindful walk and draw what you see and draw what you smell, and try to implement that into an art journal of some sort. Listen to music and draw what you hear, scribble to the sounds, notice how your body feels. I'm starting to think about ways that we can do this. I know my mom probably has more ideas on how we can do this remotely, but I just think it's going to be important for our kids, especially as we're not coming back to school, to find our footing with this and to help them, know that they're okay, we're okay, we can do this collaboratively. I'm not sure what else.
That was perfect. That was perfect, honey. I think it's really great. One of the things that we call mindful walking, just the whole foundation for mindful walking is really just everything that you do mindfully is really on purpose. So it's on purpose learning, right? And, the biggest complaint that I hear when I was a mindful consultant across the state is that I would hear teachers say, if they could just listen, if they would just pay attention, if I could just get them to listen for 5 minutes so that I could get get the instructions out. But you know that when you get a gathering of humans, big or small, everybody's neurological system is going to be hardwired differently. And then you take into account, we have to remember that people who have had trauma in their lives, who have had disruptions in their lives, they are not hardwired like we are for optimal learning. So just having that, sitting in that place of compassion for littles and mediums and bigs, if we can just see that, these kids are not trying to make our lives difficult, and also when we think about ourselves as from a mindful place in our as educators, we're mindful educators. We think about this from the perspective of, we don't teach art, we don't teach music, we don't teach science, we don't teach 2nd grade, 9th grade, we don't teach 11th grade, we don't teach kindergarten. We teach human beings. We teach humans. And I can't imagine that anybody is on this Zoom call. Not one of us went into education, whatever realm of education we went into, because we didn't love mentoring and fostering whatever your specialty is, that in human beings. And I think along the way, with all the standards and the urgency and the and the assessments and everything that gets bogged in there, it ramps up our own fear and our own sense of maybe urgency about our jobs and about how people are going to perceive us, and if kids aren't meeting these standards. And we're forgetting along the way that humans have different needs, and that art or music or speech therapy or OT or science or math, these are all part and parcel of every single child's journey through life, right? And I think to myself, as a 52-year-old woman, so many people, I've had a bunch of teachers along the way, and not one person, except for when I started working as learning about mindfulness, not one person taught me how to pay attention on purpose, but plenty of people expected me to. Plenty of people said, listen, I need your eyes. I need you to listen. Kelly, look at me. Think about how many times we say that and how many times we really command attention. But think about how often or how many times have you really been taught how to pay attention? So paying attention on purpose is listening to a sound. So Hannah we have them, I didn't bring one in, but we have a singing bowl. We each have one, and, or you can have a little, and you just say, guys, today, before we start art, we're going to listen on purpose. We're going to pay attention on purpose with our ears. It's really tapping into all the sensory systems and recognizing that not everybody's sensory system is hardwired the same way. So when we can honor that and give it a little bit of time to grow and develop, then we actually sustain more attention and focus for kids. So it's not about, I need you to pay attention. It's, here's how you pay attention. So maybe you develop an art lesson around listening. But first you say, hey, we're going to listen on purpose. And that's a lot of the language that I say is on purpose. We're doing this on purpose. So you could play a tone on your laptop or a tone on your cell phone, and you just encourage kids you say to them, your only job during this activity is to breathe and listen until the sound is completely gone. And I've had a ton of teachers who've said to me, that will never work. And I'm here to tell you, I've done this with pre-K all the way to seniors in high school. I've done this with children who are emotionally disturbed and in day treatment programs, and they listen. They listen. You know why? Because we're doing something completely different. And we're not asking them to do something hard. We're inviting them to do something that's innate. We all breathe. So we're going to breathe on purpose. It's called a mindful breath or a breath break. Lots of teachers put breath break clouds up on their whiteboard, and they write breath break 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are for, if you only have these kids for half an hour or 45 minutes, think about how much time it takes just to transition them into your learning. So if kids come in and they hear this beautiful music already playing, and you say to them, you are not busy. Another thing about being present and being a mindful teacher is that you're not busy. setting up the materials or doing whatever, you're standing right at that door and you're saying this to these kids. I'm so glad you showed up for art today. I'm so glad you showed up for art today. Man, am I glad you're here. Not how are you? How was your day? You know, what's going on? Not asking how are they. You're just saying, I'm glad to see you, because we need to see each other. It's about taking away that automaticity of our day, taking away that sludging through one class after another class after another class, because when we do that, we lose our passion. We lose our passion for connection. And SEL, social emotional learning, the whole foundation of that is about building relationships and building connections with people. You remember, I remember those teachers who touched my soul. And I also remember those teachers who hurt my heart, or who embarrassed me, or who shamed me, or who, you know, didn't see me. I remember those people. I do not remember all the teachers in between who just were those monotonous, mundane teachers. I don't remember them. Neither probably do you. But I bet Hannah could tell me 2 or 3 teachers that she just adored. And I also know she can tell me right off the bat which one she did not like and the reason why. And most of us can. So it's, you know, it's about doing your work first too. And so from a social emotional learning perspective, it's about asking yourself, am I ready for this group of kids to come through the door? And if I'm not ready, what do I need? Let me give myself 20 seconds to ask 2 questions. How am I feeling right this second? Am I aggravated? Am I overwhelmed? Are you going to bring that energy into the next group of kids? Because our vibrational frequency that we give off is viscerally felt and absorbed by others. So when we tap into our own heart and body, are my shoulders up like this as another group of kids are coming through the door? If they are, can I give myself just a minute? Hannah said something that mindful breathing is as much for her as it is for her kids. It absolutely is. And I think to myself, when I was in the classrooms and when I was in a school system and I had 47 children on my caseload, and I would go from, you know, pre-K to, you know, and going. I didn't have time to eat. I didn't have time to drink water, and I didn't have time to go to the bathroom. And we now have this, you know, the silver lining to being in a remote space to take care of ourselves is to practice our own emotional intelligence. So tapping into small moments throughout your day right now, asking yourselves those 2 questions. How am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body? And then if the emotion is an emotion that is driving attention that isn't serving you in any good way, depression, fear, sadness, worry, overwhelmment, urgency, if those things, then don't get mired in it. Know that you can say to yourself, oh, this is my amygdala. This is my neurochemistry that has completely turned into fear. And I can change that. And how can I change it? I can change it by taking care of myself in small ways. I can breathe on purpose. Breathing on purpose is the only way, non-pharmaceutically, that you can change the neurochemistry of your brain. You know, you think about when you're in that state of distress and somebody wants to be helpful and they say, just breathe, right? Because what happens to ourselves when we go into a fight, flight, freeze place is that the parasympathetic nervous system alerts, the amygdala is in charge, the neurochemistry of our body and brain shifts and changes. We can't think logically. We can't make a plan. We can't tell other people what's happening to us. And we start to go into what we call flexion. And we breathe then from our clavicle. So our shoulders go up, the clavicle, we pull away, and the breathing becomes rapid and shallow. And so that rapid, shallow breathing doesn't support optimal anything. So practicing small moments of breathing on purpose while you're doing something like a mindful walk, which means you go outside and you do this very purposeful walking where your heels hit the ground and then you go to the balls of your feet. Your arms are resting down by your side. Your eyes are soft and you're breathing in through your nose and you are filling your lungs and your belly with breath and you're out through your mouth. And you're feeling each step. You're being present, which means right here, right now on purpose. So we take kids on a mindful safari, and lots of art teachers use the mindful safari, where they'll say, hey guys, I'm really glad that you came to art today. Before we get started on this lesson, we're going to take a mindful safari. And if it's raining, you can do a mindful safari right in your art room, or you can take them down the hallway and do a mindful safari. Even I've done this with even middle school kids and sophomores in high school. You give them the assignment that you can pick any color that you want, and everybody loves empowerment. So if you say, you have those reactive learners. So if you say, we're going to go out and we're going to look for anything we can see that's the color red, this kid's going to want to find blue. So you just take away that, that power struggle by saying any color that you want to look for. But the challenge is to see if you can find 10 things of that color, any color you want. You don't even have to say, but you keep it inside your mindful mind, or you keep it inside your thinking brain. And we're going to do this. Your only job is to notice your feet as it hits the floor and be looking left to right for the color that you choose. Hold it inside your brain so that when you come back, you're going to take this piece of paper and you have 2 minutes to either write all the 10 things that you saw, or you're going to sketch out the 10 things that you saw. What you're doing with that is you're building their capacity to tap into their executive functioning skills, their working memory skills, their ability to visually perceive and visually process, and then to be able to show what they know, right? And it's fun. And here's the other thing: when kids, anybody, when any human being is having fun, the neurochemistry supports that. And it supports this. When we're stressed, the neurochemistry supports stress. And when we're having fun and when we're feeling connected, this part engages. Any questions right now? I'm going to find those videos, but if anybody wants to.
No, that's awesome. We do have a couple questions. I'm going to throw
Sure.
this one to Hannah. Hannah, you mentioned some particular books or collections of writing that you share with your students. Could you give us like your highlights? Because there are some people that are looking for some titles or authors or places that they can look for those.
Yeah, I know my mom and I have written our own. I don't know if I'm allowed to even say that on.
You can, but I can't.
Oh, I'm allowed to.
There you go.
Okay.
You can even show it, but I can't.
I don't think I have a copy with me. But awful. Sorry. Bad endorsement. Okay, well, we have our own book. It's on Amazon. You can find it there. Some Days I Flip My Lid, which goes through Max, who's 8, and he's in the 3rd grade, and he teaches his class mindful breathing, which he learns from his mom. So I use that book a lot. The kids like it because I drew the pictures and I illustrated the story, and I can tell them that my mom wrote the book, and they love that. They think that's cool. So Some Days I Flip My Lid, that's our own book. You don't have to buy that, but Puppy Mind is another really good one. I saw that pop into the chat too, so that's clearly out there. I know my mom has a couple good ones, but I do really like Puppy Mind. That's a fun one.
This is a book written for teachers by a teacher. Well, actually, she's an LCPC. She's Helene McLaughlin. She is a Maine educator, and she wrote Calm and Alert. This is chock-a-block full of tons and tons and tons of exercises, quick little movement-based exercises and mindful things that you can do, little pre-exercises. So this is a great. The DOE is not supporting, endorsing anything that I show you. I'm just giving you resources, just so you know. So that's great. This is a text that I used to use when I taught mindfulness and education at the University of Maine in Farmington. And this is called Happy Teachers Change the World. It was written by Thich Nhat Hanh and also Catherine Ware. And she is a school counselor. This is also, I call this the Mindful Bible. If you get one book, this is the book for a teacher to have. The Mindful Classroom was written by Patricia Jennings, and she was also an educator, and that's a great read as well for you. But this one is really for you. This helps you develop your own mindful practice. And one thing that I would say about this is you can't make people be mindful, and you can't make children be mindful. It's a shift in your own mindset. And so when I was teaching at Farmington, I remember a principal taking the class with me, and it was a 70-30 split. And I remember he had to give a, after you take a class, you have to do a summary of, like the evaluation of the professor. And I remember this because it was so confusing to me. His reaction or his response was, pretty good class, but if I knew ahead of time that Kellie Bailey was going to spend 8 weeks of a 15-week semester teaching me everything I needed to know so that I could be mindful, I wouldn't have taken it. I took this class so I could learn how to make my teachers mindful so they could make their kids mindful. So there you go. It really is from the top down. It is a new way. It's a shift in our thinking. Carol DeWitt wrote Growth Mindset. She wrote that program based on the data. It's a research study. She never meant for that to be a cute, Pinteresty, poster board thing. But we find ourselves falling into these things where we tell kids, you got to have a growth mindset. You got to be gritty. You got to be resilient. You got to do this. You got to do that. But we don't teach them how to do that. This one right here, this book is a beautiful book. It's called What Does It Mean to Be Present? It's so beautifully written and it's so beautifully illustrated, and the colors in here, and just, what does it mean to be present? It talks to you about, it doesn't mean showing up in class. It doesn't mean to, show something at show and tell. It doesn't mean wrapping yourself up. Being present means listening carefully when other people are speaking. So mindful listening is about really paying attention on purpose to what the other person's saying and not busying yourself formulating what you're going to say or when it's going to be your turn to talk, right? And we do that a lot. So this is just a great book. This is also written by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's A Handful of Quiet. This is a beautiful, beautiful book. A Handful of Quiet. I have a bazillion of them on my shelf that I just brought home from my classroom, and I can share more with you. But I guess I'd love to just show you these cute little these sweet videos there, and just take a break, and you guys can think about, what else you want to ask Hannah or myself, and we're happy to jump on here again. Really, this was just to have an introduction, and somebody asked if I could go through the stages of SEL, and I'll pull that up at the end if people want to stay on for that. But I also wanted to let you know that I do an SEL content hour twice a week. So on Tuesdays from 2 to 3, I break down social emotional learning for pre-K through 5th grade. And on Thursdays from 2 to 3, I break down social emotional learning and have activities that you can do for 6th through 12th grade. So you're welcome to hop on either of those. All you have to do is send me an email. It's Kellie, Kellie.Bailey@maine.gov. And you're welcome to be on those. And that's when I really go in depth with social emotional learning. I also start every one of my my classes with a mindful moment. I also, some of you know this, and I think I've seen some of your faces on here, every morning at 8:30, either myself or Bear Shea, we offer an emotional brain-based support for 15 minutes to start your day. And I walk you through a really nice mindful practice. We call them meditations, but it's just a mindful practice. We start with really grounding and centering, and I'm happy just to give a little taste of that too if Jason wants me to do that. But I'd really like to show you this video if I can.
Absolutely. Why don't we watch the videos, Kellie, and like you alluded to, this can be the first of a short series that we can do,
Sure.
that we can schedule going forward. So yeah, go ahead, Kellie, and take control of our screens.
So here's the thing, technology is not my best friend yet, and I'm still learning. So just hold space for me. That's a mindful word of just be patient. And I'll see if I can't get this going for us. Whoops, I don't know what that is. What are you guys seeing? My messy desktop? Hannah, what are you seeing?
No, we're seeing part of a browser, Mindful Schools.
Yep.
Okay, let me see if I can get this going.
If you scroll down,
let me move it up.
Yep.
Yep, just a second. Hello, wait a second. Okay, this is my technology. Hold on. I can't seem to bring the screen up. Oh, all right. I'm going to start it over.
Sometimes I've found that audio is not a friend when we try to share stuff like that. So
okay. Hang on. Okay. Are you still there, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Be patient with me. I can do this. I know I can. You're going to see real time. All right, I got this. I didn't have the sound on. Okay. Screen share. Let's see if we can do this again. Sorry, I lost it.
It's okay.
You're showing us how to stay calm under pressure.
I am.
Exactly.
And you know what I'm noticing?
Exactly.
I'm noticing that my body is a little tense right now. And there we go. My heart's pumping a tiny bit. I think I got this.
You got this.
You do. You totally
I
have
get really mad when my brother hits me a lot. I don't like it when you say you don't want to play with me.
Anna, do you see it?
When I'm mad, my brain can get a headache and it can start hurting. Your blood keeps pumping because you're like really mad. And you start to get sweaty because you're getting really, really mad. And then when you start getting really mad, you turn red. When your body can't really control yourself, mad just takes over your body. I just get out of control. It's kind of like if you had a jar and then the jar would be your brain and then you put glitter in the jar and that would be how you would feel like. If you shook up the jar and the glitter went everywhere, that would be how your mind looks. And it's like spinning around and then you don't have any time to think. And you sometimes punch stuff and people when you don't really mean it. When I get angry, I feel it in my heart. I really don't like when I get angry. The amygdala really reacts, but the prefrontal cortex tries to keep it down. When I feel like I want to, get really angry and yell, I just sometimes, take deep breaths. First, you find a place where you can be alone. Then you find some way to relax and calm down. When I need to calm down, I take deep breaths. I breathe in through my nose. Sometimes I close my eyes or just take deep breaths. It's calming down, it's not moving. It's slowing down and then it stops. And the heart pumps slow and then it goes into your brain. It's like all the sparkles are at the bottom of your brain. My brain slows down and then I feel more calm and then I'm ready to speak to that person.
So that's just one of them that's produced by Mindful Schools. If you go on mindfulschools.org, you can download any of these videos. That one's called Just Breathe. And this one right here is called Under Pressure. So are we okay, Jason, to show another one? Okay. Hold on.
Pressure, The first one, this is the last time out. He has played the entire game. He would have played the entire game in Game 6 if it wasn't a blowout.
Just beautiful. Because I think it's really a marvelous thing, that visualization thing you did. Do you all read about this or hear this? That you used to go up on Mulholland Drive and park
every night
and visualize seeing yourself as...
Yeah, I would visualize, I would
This is
visualize,
when you were broken poor.
You know, right, having directors interested in me and people that I respected saying, I like your work or whatever that is. And I had nothing at that time, so it was like, but it just made me feel better. I would drive home and think, well, I do have these things, and they're out there. I just don't have a hold of them yet, but they're out there.
Okay. So didn't you write yourself a check? I heard that you did. Is that true?
I wrote myself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. I dated it Thanksgiving 1995. And I put it in my wallet, and I kept it there, and it deteriorated and stuff. But then just before Thanksgiving 1995, I found out that I was going to make $10 million on, I think it was Dumb and Dumber, maybe.
Dumb and Dumber, yeah. So you visualize yourself like... Visualization works if you work hard.
Yeah. It's like a kickstart for your day. It just centers you, and your stress levels are just down, and you find yourself interacting in the world much easier and better.
Well, and for people that are maybe a little bit intimidated about taking up meditation, what can you tell them?
Just, there's nothing to do wrong. You can't do it wrong.
I meditate every day, and I do it in the mornings, and I do it for about 10 to 15 minutes. And I think it's important because it sets me up for the rest of the day.
I wish I found some better sounds no one's ever heard. I wish I had a better voice that sang some better words. I wish I found some chords in an order that is new. I wish I didn't have to rhyme every time I sang. I was told when I get older all my fears would shrink, but now I'm insecure and I care what people think. My name's Blurry Face and I care what you think. My name's Blurry Face and I care what you think.
Our lives are filled with distractions. Email, Twitter, texting. We're constantly connected to technology, rarely alone with just our thoughts, which is probably why there's a growing movement in America to train people to get around the stresses of daily life. It's a practice called mindfulness, and it basically means being aware of your thoughts, physical sensations, and surroundings.
There's so many different compelling studies that are showing that this is not New Age gobbledygook. This is potentially transformative of our health and well-being psychologically as well as physically. It can be useful for anxiety, depression, stress reduction.
There have been a number of studies that show mindfulness can lead to those benefits, as well as improvements in memory and attention. And at the University of Massachusetts, Justin Brewer, a psychiatrist and neuroscientist, uses mindfulness to treat addiction.
This is just the next generation of exercise. We've got the physical, exercise components down, and now it's about working out how can we actually train our minds.
Dr. Brewer is trying to understand how mindfulness can alter the functioning of the brain. Since attending the mindfulness retreat, I'd been meditating daily and was curious to see if it had an impact on my brain.
We're going to have you start with thinking of something that was very anxiety-provoking for you.
Okay. When I thought about something stressful, the cells in my brain's posterior cingulate immediately started firing, shown by the red lines that went off the chart on the computer screen.
Just drop into meditation.
Okay. When I let go of those stressful thoughts and refocused on my breath, within seconds the brain cells that had been firing quieted down, shown by the blue lines on the computer.
That's really fascinating to see like that.
Dr. Brewer believes everyone can train their brains to reach that blue mindfulness zone.
The heart is a blue, shoots up through the stony ground, but there's no room No space to rent in this town. You're out of luck. And the reason that you had to care, the traffic is stuck. And you're not moving anywhere. You thought you found a friend to take you out of this place. Someone you could lend a hand in return for grace. It's a beautiful day.
Let's see if I can get us back. I don't want any more. Shut that off. Okay. Where are we, Jason? So
that was awesome, Kelly. Well, I think we're
about at 3.
I was gonna say we're coming up on the end of the hour, so
Yep.
I want to just take an opportunity to thank you, Kelly and Hannah, for your input and your thoughts and your guidance on this. The comments in the chat box have been all positive. Everybody's been really thrilled about the informative nature of this, and definitely a follow-up, I think, is in our future for this. And so people have an opportunity maybe to practice some of this and go do some reading and some searching on their own, and then we can come back together and talk about some additional strategies, things to go a little deeper.
I also just wanted to add, and I really appreciate it, I know Hannah does too, that the DOE, actually next week, we have a yoga specialist who also is employed at the Department of Education. Her name is Christina Stade, and she is going to be offering every Tuesday and every Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30, and maybe a half hour or 45 or even an hour, but she's going to be providing some yoga or movement breaks and rest and restoration sort of thing for you for the end of the day. Bear and I were offering the brain-based emotional supports. The morning one is still highly, people are participating. We have anywhere from 50 to 100 people on a daily basis that join in the morning. But in the afternoon, I think people are, not sure what they're supposed to do, or we're going to shift that up a little bit, and we're offering some yoga, and it's very gentle yoga. So it's, yoga you can do in your chair. She'll have lots of resources for you to share with your students. So if you want to put movement-based learning or just have a quick yoga stretch, I'm available if you want to email me for any questions. I know Hannah would be more than happy to field any questions. So I'm sure if you want to reach out to her, is that okay, Han?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So thanks so much. We really, really appreciate this opportunity. And I know I didn't get a chance to go into the SEL, but if you want more SEL, please feel free to hop on to my SEL specific content hours.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So many valuable links in the chat box. So if you don't know how to save the chat, if you open up the chat feature at the bottom of your window, and then where it says type message here under Zoom group chat, there should be a little box with 3 dots. So if you hover over it, it says more. If you click on that, you can select save chat, and it will save all of the chat text as a text file, universal text file on your computer, so you can reference all those later. I did put a link to a survey in the chat box as well, so you can get 1 hour of professional development credit for this through the DOE. So if you complete that form, and your candid feedback is fantastic, because we all want to get better and we want to be able to target your needs. So if your school is foregoing vacation next week, I hope you find a couple ways to take it easy on yourselves. But if you have vacation, enjoy it, because if you've ever earned a vacation in your entire professional career, it is right now. So you guys are all fantastic. You're awesome. Thank you again to Kelly and to Hannah for their insight. And you can always send me questions too, and I'm happy to get them to Kelly and Hannah, and we can do some networking that way too. So,
awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. I want to thank you all for your time today. And this will be available on the Department of Education's YouTube channel coming up in the next day or two. So if you want to send it other people's way, or you want to review it again, it'll be there for future viewing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all, everybody. I'm going to give you a moment to save that chat box if you want before I end the meeting. But if you got to go, I'll see you later. Thank you all so much. Anybody left on that needs help saving the chat, or is everybody good?
I'm still saving it.
Yep, that's fine. I'll hang on until everybody's got it. Martina, thank you for your input in the chat box, by the way. That was awesome. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome, Jason. And Jason, I pulled up the survey, so that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
Can I leave the meeting and that will stay up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It just opens in a new tab in your browser. So yeah, you can complete it anytime.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Wonderful.
At least have a great long weekend.
Can't wait.
I know, right? Seriously. Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Gloria, you look confounded. Are you finding a way to save it? Are you doing something else? Are you having success, Cynthia?
Yes, I am. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Good. Very good.
Great session. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you again.
You too.
Be well.
You as well.
Thanks.
Bye.
Lisa, how are you doing? Good? Did you figure out how to save the chat, Lisa? Yep. Okay. Cool. Have a nice weekend, ladies.
You too. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. We'll see you soon.
Okay.